Hey folks, welcome to part 2 of my fat loss videos. If you just found this one and you're curious about a little bit more about my philosophy behind fat loss and weight loss, you can go back and watch the first video. This one is a little bit more of actual techniques on how to do that. So if you're looking for specifically what do I need to do right now, I've got a great mindset and I understand, I just want to know how to really get into this. This is the right video. So the number one most effective technique for fat loss, in my opinion, is ketosis. So if you haven't heard of this before, what ketosis is a state that your body gets into when it's burning its own body fat for fuel instead of relying on fuel from the carbohydrates in the food that you eat. So eventually I'll do another video on this because I know I mentioned it before, but basically what you do is you eat very, very low carbohydrates. And what you're able to do is your body eventually, instead of relying on food for fuel, is it can rely on the nutrients in food for cellular repair and things of that nature. But for actual energy, you're getting that from stored body fat. So you basically turn your body into a fat-burning machine that's able to feed itself. And there's a lot of benefits to this other than just burning fat, but that's what we're talking about here today. So real quickly on how to get into ketosis. Basically, the number one important thing is that you want to lower your carbohydrate intake to as close to zero as you can. Anything under 20 grams is usually ideal, but the lower the better. In addition to that, you want to increase your amount of dietary fats. So olive oil, coconut oil, especially MCT oil is huge. Avocados, nuts, especially macadamias are good. Basically anything that's really high in fat and very, very low in carbohydrates. Moderate amounts of protein are good. I don't want to encourage stressing out too much about the numbers, but just the more fat you can get into your day, and especially the lower carbohydrates, the better. After a while, you're going to be able to get into a state of ketosis. I really encourage you guys to research that because there's a lot more to it, but we don't have time to talk about it here today. So number 2 is intermittent fasting. I've done a video on this, so go back and watch that to learn a little bit more about it, but basically what you do is instead of eating whenever you want all day, the window that you're allowed to consume calories in, I shouldn't say allowed, but the window that you consume calories in is restricted. So a lot of people start with 8 hours. You can go as low as 4 hours or even less for some people if you're brave. So rather than eating round the clock, let's say you have food at 10 a.m. in a 6-hour window, 4 p.m. is your last bite. So what that does is you only have calories coming in for a limited time. And so what your body has to do when you don't have food coming in is it has to get fuel from other sources. So as long as you're not eating too high of an excess of calories and especially carbohydrates, your body can start using its own fat for fuel, which is, again, as I said, a process called ketosis. So those two techniques are synergistic for sure. Number 3, high intensity training. This is especially helpful with weight loss, but it also keeps your growth hormone levels high. And the cool thing about it is you can get a killer workout in about 5 minutes. So I mentioned this before. My favorite thing is sprints. I live on a hill, so what I do is I'll just basically start at the bottom, run up to the top as fast as I possibly can, jog back down to the bottom, wait maybe 30 seconds or so, and then sprint back up again. You could do up to 10 of these. And you'll find you can do it on a treadmill too. When you're done, you're exhausted. I mean, I used to do miles and miles of running, like 2 or 3 mile runs, and when I was done, I'd be like, all right, I guess hopefully I got something out of that. With these sprints, you're going to be winded. You're going to be destroyed really, really quickly. And when you combine that with the fasting afterwards, your body's in an anabolic state. It needs fuel now, so it's burning. If you don't give it any food and you haven't eaten in, let's say, 10 hours when you did this workout, you're gonna burn some fat quickly. So I really encourage that. A lot of people think you need to spend hours and hours on a treadmill just pounding out miles. You're really not going to get much benefit out of that. In fact, you might over time start to notice that your body isn't recovering as well. Your joints might start hurting and your hormone levels actually might not be where you want them to be, despite the fact that you are exercising. Obviously, it's all about that, finding that happy zone. Some people can do well. Some people are running ultra marathons, 100 or 200 mile runs. You shouldn't do that. You don't need to do that. You can. It's fun if you want, if you're into that sort of thing. But in terms of losing fat, if that's your main goal, keep it short. Do really high intervals where you're just going maximum output, maximum speed with little short, brief rest periods in between. A lot of people use what's called a Tabata protocol, which is 8 sets. So if you're doing sprints, this is going to be 8 sprints. I think usually about 20 seconds on, 10 seconds of rest. You can play with the numbers a little bit. You might find various things work better for you. So next one, there's a few supplements that help you out with this. And I don't want to emphasize too hard on the supplements. A lot of people are looking for a magic diet pill. There's no such thing. There's a lot of fat burners out there with just tons of caffeine and weird. They're just shedding water weight. You can use those if you're competitive and you're trying to get an edge before a contest, but I really wouldn't recommend these for large amounts of weight loss, especially not over the long term. But there are a few safe things that can help you out. Number one is called EGCG. It's a antioxidant found in green tea, which you can also drink. But it's a little more concentrated if you get it in a supplement form. What it does is it causes your fat cells to commit suicide. This is called apoptosis. So inside every single cell, there's an instruction to die. And this can be triggered by various things. If a cell becomes ill or sick, that pathway, that instruction manual exists so that the cell can sacrifice itself for the better of the other cells around it. But what EGCG does is it kind of hijacks that system and tells your fat cells to die even if they're not sick, even if they don't need to. So this can actually help you get into ketosis, because when this fat cell dies, it still needs to get burned. So you can still get fuel out of it, but you're also going to lower the amount of fat cells that you have in your body by consuming this regularly. And again, this is not a magic pill. If you just sit on the couch and take EGCG pills all day, you probably won't notice anything. But I would recommend getting the ones that aren't caffeinated, because if you take too many of them, especially if you're consuming caffeinated beverages already, it might add up pretty quickly and you might get some headaches. It might go too far into the caffeine region. Again, it's all about a happy medium. Another thing you can try, number 2 out of the 2 supplements, is called Carnitine. L-carnitine is an amino acid. It's found in red meats and to a degree in other things. You can find it in supplements, but what it does is, it very similar to EGCG, is it encourages the body to burn fat as fuel. Usually, if you're just a regular average person, you haven't tried getting into ketosis, whether you might eat clean or you might not. Either way, chances are you're probably burning primarily glucose as fuel. Unfortunately, glucose is sugar. Not the same as sucrose, which is table sugar, but pretty much all carbohydrates, whether it's muffins, corn syrup, sugar, oatmeal, cereal, wheat, it all breaks down into glucose, and that's what you're using as fuel. It's a good fuel source, but it's not the best fuel source, which is fat. But your body really wants to burn carbohydrates and wants to burn sugar if it never has burned fat before. So you got to look at these things as a slow, as people say, it's a marathon, not a sprint. When it comes to fat loss, it's exactly like that. But if you try these things out all in conjunction with each other, you might find you get results pretty quickly. The last thing is, I don't really consider it a supplement as I do a food, but it's been a miracle for me and I love it, and that is coffee. I never was into coffee before, never thought I'd like the taste. It's kind of associated with stomach aches. I always heard, oh, I think it's bad for you, I'm not sure. It's actually not, and obviously in moderation. Too much of it is going to give you, too high of a caffeine effect, but there's actually a lot of good stuff in coffee. It increases amounts of BDNF, which is a growth hormone for your brain, but I won't go too much into that. But what coffee does, it actually doubles your ketones. So if you've been fasting and you have a cup of coffee, especially dark with good, nice, clean, organic beans, it doubles your ketone production. So if you're already in mild ketosis, this is going to kick you up. And if you have it in the morning, I don't know if you guys are familiar with bulletproof coffee, but basically you take your beans, brew your coffee, add in some healthy fats. MCT oil is the best. In addition to that, grass-fed butter, preferably raw if you can find it. Coconut oil is also good. Sometimes I actually put in cocoa butter to make a little white chocolate tasting thing, and I just sweeten it with stevia, and I feel great, and it helps me stay fueled for the day. So it's a really, really nice addition to these other techniques that I was talking about. So what I do is I'll usually have my butter coffee in the morning. And I don't want to give Dave Asprey all the credit for this. Bulletproof coffee is an idea that he came up with, but similar ideas were also pioneered by other people such as Rob Wolf, who wrote the Paleo Solution. I really encourage you guys to check that out. But yeah, have coffee in the morning. I fully support it, especially if you're doing fasting and especially if you're trying to get into ketosis. It's huge. Try these things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, as many as you want in conjunction. Try one, then try the other. Please subscribe, leave some comments below, let me know if this is helpful. If you have any other techniques that you either want to share or you want to learn more about, please don't hesitate to let me know. I'm here for you guys, and we're all trying to figure this stuff out together. So I hope this has been helpful. Again, give me some feedback, and have a wonderful day.